Recording in progress.
All right. Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome. Okay. Miss Liz is going to take it away. Today we are making some spicy roasted zucchini and squash. Liz.
Thanks, Ashley. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our July Zoom call and demo. Glad you could all join us. I'm Liz Juneau, the nutrition educator for the 912 Food Pharmacy Program. And who else is on the Zoom call today? Would you introduce yourself? You can unmute or you can drop it in the chat, either way.
I'm Emily. I'm the new Vista here at Forsyth Farmers Market. So I joined to see what these things are all about and be part of them.
Welcome, Emily.
Thanks, Liz, for having me.
Hi, everybody should know my name is Dion.
Yes.
And I'm her mother, Pam.
Hey, Dion and Pam, welcome again. Y'all have been faithful participants. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hey guys, I'm Bree. I'm doing my practicum with you guys this summer, and I'm still going to be with you next semester too. So I'm excited to be here.
Welcome, Bree. Anybody else?
And then we've got the crew from Gateway over there. They're watching from their conference room.
Hi, Gateway peeps.
Hey.
Welcome, everybody. So as Ashley said, we're going to do a demo today based on our produce for the month. So we're featuring what we call summer squash. So summer squash consists of yellow squash and zucchini squash, a little yellow and green mixed together. So we have a really easy recipe for you today. It is a roasted yellow squash and zucchini with a little bit of seasoning and olive oil. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the cooking method called roasting. But before we start with that, let me tell you what you need for this recipe. So you will need a cutting board. You will need a knife. You will need some measuring spoons. You will need a tray, like a baking tray, and you'll need a spatula or something actually to turn the vegetables over kind of midway between cooking. And you'll also need an oven, which I've already have on 425 degrees, and it's preheated. So what I have here is I've already cut up the zucchini and yellow squash. And one of the keys of doing this is to make sure that when you cut the squash, you cut it in somewhat uniform, equal pieces. So when they cook, they'll all cook evenly. You wouldn't want to have some smaller, some larger. You can decide if you want it a little bit smaller or a little bit larger. Just make sure that they are more uniform. So I've got the yellow squash all cut up. I've got some of the zucchini cut up, but I've got a little piece of zucchini here that I'm going to finish cutting. And so I actually just sliced it in half, and I'm going to slice it again. And then I'm going to slice it one more time. So I'm kind of making it in quarters. And then I'm going to come down here and cut it in smaller pieces. I tended to make mine a little bit smaller. If you want it a little bit chunkier, you can make it a little bit chunkier. It's really up to you how large you want it. So this is beautiful yellow squash down here and zucchini from the market. And zucchini and yellow squash, the reason it's called summer squash, a couple of reasons it's called summer squash. One of the reasons is it is a summer vegetable. So it's in season, and you should have gotten a newsletter this month. If you came to one of the clinic stops, one of the farm truck stops. If you didn't get one and you want one next month, just ask and I have extra copies. But it talks about how to select, clean, store, and eat squash. And so generally it's in season from April to September. So that's what constitutes the summer squash. But the other thing that makes it a summer squash is the skin is edible. So there's also winter squash that is available, of course, in the winter, but you have to peel winter squash. It has a hard outer skin. Summer squash does not. So everything is edible. So what I've gotten here is those chopped squash. And the other thing I'm going to add, so you will need some kind of oil. I'm actually using olive oil in this recipe. You could use avocado oil. You could just use vegetable oil. Olive oil gives it a little bit more flavor. So I'm putting in here 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I'm also going to add some garlic powder. So I'm going to do a half a teaspoon. So basically all the seasonings are a half a teaspoon. So a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm going to put a half a teaspoon of salt. And I'm using a kosher salt, which is a little bit thicker salt, a little bit coarser salt. Taste it a little bit more. I'm not going to actually measure the pepper because I'm going to use pepper, whole peppercorns and grind it. I'm going to just kind of estimate a half a teaspoon of that. So really easy. And then I'm just going to toss it, make sure they're all coated. As I pull it up here. You could also use, if you didn't want to use these seasonings, you could use something like seasoned salt. You could use something like Cajun seasoning. You could also use something like Old Bay. That type of seasoning would be fine, or any kind of other seasoning that you like. I actually have some seasoned salt that I have here, but I'm just going to use the basic seasoning. So pretty much oils coated the squash, and then I have just kind of a sheet pan here that I'm going to layer it in. You want to make sure you have a large enough pan where the squash is not piled on top, like it all can be separate. And leave a little bit of room. Let me move this over so you can kind of see that. Leave a little bit of room where you can get some air in between. So you wouldn't want to just have everything kind of too close because it's not going to roast. It's going to be more like steaming. It'll be a little bit different than this. So I'm going to try to spread this out as much as possible. And then, as I said, we already had the oven on 425 degrees. I have a middle rack in here, so I'm just going to place it on the middle rack. Put it even in there. And then I'm going to put the timer on for 30 minutes. And about halfway through, go back down a little bit, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to kind of turn them over to make sure they cook evenly. There we go, 30 minutes. When I spoke to many of you this past month, we talked about the squash and I asked you how you normally prepared squash. So does anybody want to answer that question? How would you normally prepare summer squash?
Feel free to unmute yourselves. There you go.
We do like sauteed squash sometimes.
Yeah. And Dion, that's probably the most common answer I got, where people said they sauteed it, maybe a little bit of onions they put in it, and that was the most common. The recipe that I had at the clinic stops was actually eating it raw. It was a yellow squash and zucchini salad, and that was very new to people. And I see, Pamela, why you're shaking your head?
I eat it raw.
You don't eat it? You don't like it raw?
Mm-mm.
No, yeah. Many people were surprised because they actually liked it raw, but they had never had it raw. So people tend to think that you can't eat it raw, but you can. So many vegetables are very versatile like that. We just may not be used to eating it that way. I'm not saying that you're going to like it, but you know, to try it. So I got a lot of good feedback from people that said, "Oh, this is really good raw," and it really didn't taste it because of the dressing. It kind of softened it up. It wasn't as hard. What's that?
But you did eat the salad and you said you liked it when I gave it to you.
What?
That salad I brought home.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Maybe you didn't realize it was raw, which a lot of people didn't. So I just want to talk a little bit about this idea of roasting vegetables. So roasting is typically a way of decline. Sorry, people. There we go. Should not have gotten a call, but I did. So roasting is a way of cooking in an oven, typically, that uses dry heat. Sauteing is a way that's more kind of wet heat. So the keys to roasting are, as I said earlier, make the pieces of the vegetable uniform, use at least 400-degree oven or higher. And for this recipe, I use 425. So it has to be high heat, typically dry heat, and mostly to fork tender. So what types of vegetables would you typically roast? Lots of different ones. It's anything from potatoes, sweet potatoes. You could do summer squash, you could do winter squash, parsnips, turnips, carrots. It's pretty endless what you can roast. And it's a really, really easy way because, as I showed you, you prep it, but then you put it in the oven and you kind of forget about it. So it's not really where you're sauteing and you're having to pay attention and stand at the stove. It's a really kind of a hands-off approach to cooking. Any questions from anybody about anything we've talked about or anything else?
I know that olive oil has kind of a lower smoke point. So is 425 like the hottest, you would probably want to do that in the oven.
Yes, actually, and for this vegetable, because it's soft, you know, if it's something like a potato or a winter squash, it's going to be a lot more dense. These are not very dense. They have a little bit more moisture content. So you'd probably, 425 would probably be the highest you'd want for it. More of the dense vegetables, maybe not.
And then part of the reason that salad works out, even though they're raw, is part of the recipe is to let them soak with some salt. And the salt actually helps pull the moisture out of the pieces so that it's not squishy and mushy and weird. So you set them in the salt for a little while, it draws out that moisture, and then you rinse them again to get the salt off so it's not high sodium. And that's a trick that you can do with lots of different kinds of vegetables if they have like a high water content, so that you don't end up with something that's kind of mushy with a strange texture to it.
Yeah, so good point. How would you use this recipe? Well, you can eat it as is. It's really good. You could have it with as a side dish, but you could also use it like something over pasta, or you can put it in a tomato sauce and put that over pasta. So it has different applications. Ashley mentioned something about texture. And so I want to talk a little bit about what was in the newsletter as far as the mindful eating practice this month. Every month in the newsletter and also in your cookbook, we've had some what we call journaling prompts. And that's just ways that you can learn a little bit more about your, maybe your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior as you've gone along in the program. We've also had kind of a mindfulness moment and then a mindfulness practice. And what we included this month is how we taste foods and the importance of slowing down, and the way we cut up foods actually affects how we taste them. Smell affects how we taste foods greatly, which a lot of people have realized with COVID and losing their sense of smell and taste, especially the smell. But the way we taste food is we actually taste food only on our tongue. We don't have any taste buds or taste sensories in our cheeks of our mouth or the roof of our mouth. So when we take like smaller, slower bites and really have them on our tongue, we're able to taste those things better. Can anybody tell me what the 5 different taste sensations are? I'll give you just a second to kind of think about that. And if anybody wants to drop that in the chat or unmute yourself and tell me what you think those 5 taste receptors, they call them, are. Like when you taste food, what do you think you taste?
Sweet.
Yeah, sweet's one of them. Yeah.
Salty.
Salty, absolutely. That's another one.
And is
Sometimes
one
we
of
like
them
those together.
Savory.
Savory, that's another
Yeah,
one.
savory.
Yeah, they also call that umami. Something like a mushroom would be more the savory umami flavor, or an eggplant.
Sour.
Sour, absolutely, Dion. Yeah, sour is one of them as well. And then we've got one more. It's maybe a taste we don't really like, though.
Spicy.
Actually, it's bitter. It is
Bitter.
bitter. So salty, bitter, sweet, sour, and umami. And sometimes those flavors work in unison together. But again, how we smell food plays a large part in how we like food or how it appeals to us. And also the texture of food is huge, which I've been hearing from a lot of you when I've asked some questions about texture. Texture is an important part of tasting and the taste buds. So slowing down, we talked last month about single tasking, not multitasking, really kind of savoring the food, and using your tongue and your sense of smell is important in that mindfulness process. As far as the journaling, anybody want to tell me if they have been using the journaling prompts and what you have gained from that, if you have? Gian or Pamela, have you been doing the journaling?
No, I need to start.
Yeah, you can start at any time. They're in the cookbook, so they'll be there for you if you want to, even after the program, if you want to be thinking about those things, it'll be still relevant when we complete the program. So this month, the questions were, do you notice any differences in the way you feel physically or mentally when you eat certain foods? So that's something to be thinking about. And then the other question is, are you trying new ways of cooking? And we talked about this new way of cooking that maybe people aren't familiar with, in the idea of roasting, and especially roasting vegetables. Back to the first question, do you notice any difference in the way you feel mentally or physically when you eat certain foods? Keep in mind that food and what we eat affects us physically, it affects our energy level, of course, digestive system, but it also can affect our mood. So that's a huge part of when you're noticing food and how it affects you, not just the physical, but how it affects you emotionally with your mood. So we know that sometimes things stimulate us, and then sometimes things may calm us down, or it may just affect us in many different ways. So just noticing those things. So the idea of mindfulness is eating with intention and attention, and this part is the attention part. Any other questions, comments?
And feel free to put them in the chat box if that's easier too, and I can read them to Liz.
Well, through the magic of Zoom, I have the roasted vegetables that are finished. And so I'm just going to plate them up. So I've got a spatula here and a plate. How does that look?
Yeah.
So you have this beautiful color, which is another way, we practice mindfulness, is looking at our food. And so the yellow, the green, the light green on the zucchini, a little bit of the black pepper you can see on there. Like I said, you could use this as a side to a meat, maybe chicken or fish or pork, but you could also use it on top of pasta. You could have it on something like as a side to rice. It could be a vegetarian option as well. So I'm going to go ahead and taste a bite.
You guys can't smell it from there, but it smells really good in this kitchen, I'll tell you that.
What I like about this recipe is you really get the flavor of the vegetables, but of course the olive oil, the salt and pepper, the garlic enhances it. It doesn't cover it up. So you get that nice taste. If I would have cut these a little bit larger, it probably would have a little more texture and they may be a little bit more crispy, kind of a little bit smaller. So again, you get to decide.
Miss Bowers on the chat says it looks good, very colorful.
It is, absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else have any suggestion, any ideas how they would, if they prepared this, what they would serve it with?
When
I
I
would
was
do-
little, my mom would always sneak it into pasta sauce, so she would sneak some extra veggies into dinner.
That would be a way.
Yes, that's
And then-
good. I would do it with like rice and maybe chicken.
That would sounds really yummy. Absolutely.
Dion and Pamela said they're gonna try the recipe.
Good deal.
You'll have to let us know how it goes, ladies.
Yeah, I had did it before at the beginning of this month. It came out really good.
Oh, you've already tried it. Great. Yeah, and then what
I'ma
did
do it
what
again.
did you serve it with, Dion?
I think I did air fried chicken.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you cook with chicken as well. Yeah, I think it'd be a nice accompaniment to chicken and prepare it anyway. Great.
I even
Good deal.
fish.
You know, it would be interesting too. I mean, we have this as a roasting, but since you have an air fryer, you may be converting this to an air fryer recipe. I don't really know how you would do that because I don't have one of those, but I would think that would be interesting if you could cook it in the air fryer too. Maybe a little crisper as well, but same ingredients. So if you try that, let me know.
Yeah, I think it would be good with fish too, like a white fish. That would probably complement that well.
Yes. So we still have lots of good zucchini, yellow squash at the market on the farm truck. If you want to try this recipe or the salad recipe, like I said, it's going to be in season for a couple of more months. We'll have one more month to visit you at the clinic stop. So I hope to see you next month in the month of August. If you need the back newsletters, if you missed 1 month and you want to get that, please let me know. I have extra copies. I'd be happy to give that to you. So you can have that information. And if you haven't started journaling, you could start now. So I would really encourage you to do that and to do some of the mindful eating practices. They're really simple. Anything else before we close?
Oh, Miss Bowers says she loves the garlic and more the better with baked fish. That does sound good.
Yeah.
And in August, we'll be talking about okra. So we'll have okra recipes and samples, and that'll stay in season for a couple more months here too.
All right. So we're going to be having a roasted okra that we'll be sampling, and then we're going to more do a traditional saute that we'll be doing in the next Zoom call. So you'll be getting that information next month.
All right, everybody.
Thank you all for joining us.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks, Liz. Bye, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Liz.
All right.